morning. It's Tuesday, the 2nd of June. You found us here on the weather desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. I'm so glad you're with us. We tackle today's top weather headlines, and we've got a bunch to run through for you today. We're going to start off by just showcasing some of the things we'll be talking about during the coming half hour. And it begins in the western and southern U.S., where big storms hit both of those regions pretty hard yesterday. We'll take you out to Colorado. We'll take you to Alabama. And that system that hit Alabama is the same complex of storms that earlier hit Kansas City. So we'll have some more on that as well. In addition, we will look forward. We'll show you some areas that need to be concerned about additional hail and tornadoes later today with the National Severe Weather Outlook. Hampton Roads is in pretty good shape. We're going to enjoy a lot of sunshine here, but it's going to get windy, and we're going to talk about what those winds will mean for our area as well. Now, we're going to turn our attention to the tropics, and we've got some more news coming out from the World Meteorological Organization as they address the developing El Nino, potentially a super El Nino, and what it will likely mean for different parts of the world. Good report coming from them. And again, some parts of the world really hit hard, others getting a few breaks. We'll let you know what it means for our tropical season. Things are heating up in the tropics, especially the eastern Pacific, where we have two systems I'm monitoring. We'll show you those, what land masses need to pay close attention and which areas probably won't need to worry too much. Then we're going to talk about Hawaii and Kilauea. There was a whirlwind, some dust and kind of debris and ash from the volcano there, Kilauea, getting caught up in a thermal updraft. We'll show you that whirlwind and the smoke. There was a meteor boom over parts of the U.S. They could hear it. We'll show you what part of the country. We'll talk about that, and we'll break down the differences between meteors, meteorites, and that's just kind of a fun story we're going to revisit. We also have this high threat of rip currents today. We're talking about the likelihood of some of those rip currents, not only for Virginia Beach, but down along the Outer Banks as well. So this is something, if you are in town visiting Hampton Roads, or if you live here and you're thinking, well, sunshine, I want to get out, maybe dip my toes into the water, you may want to think twice with that high threat of rip currents. We'll explain what's going on and have more for you on that coming up. So let's start off with a look at those severe storms back across parts of Colorado, back into Alabama as well. You can see this morning those areas not dealing with too much, but as we take a look and take you back in time, this is yesterday, and we're going to let this loop again because Denver was hit during the afternoon. You can see this line of storms as it develops. Take a look. So there it was in the morning, and then you see during the mid-afternoon, this cell right there, that's the monster that did it. We're going to show you what they're dealing with as they are cleaning up after getting hit with the severe weather. Take a look at this intense hail. This was a storm that, again, I just showed you on the radar. It pelted downtown Denver yesterday afternoon. Several inches, golf ball size hail fell in just 20 minutes. The storm also delayed more than 600 flights at Denver International Airport. Now, about 30 minutes away, crews in Aurora had to use a bulldozer to clean up all the hail they got there. Even more storms are possible later today. Now, we'll take you from this area, Colorado, down to the deep south and around Birmingham. You can see some storms that came rolling through this morning. Things pretty quiet, as I mentioned, but you go back to yesterday, look at those storms raking through central Alabama. They're now assessing the damage after strong storms slammed this part of the country as well. This is a look at the aftermath in central Alabama, where strong winds toppled trees in Bessemer, just outside of Birmingham, crushing several cars and some homes. It was a similar story back in Missouri. I mentioned this same storm system that hit Alabama also created big problems in western Missouri. Widespread damage around the Kansas City area. That was late Sunday night into Monday morning. So downed trees fell on homes in at least one apartment complex.
About 1:30, I just heard a lot of wind and hail, and this giant tree, I assume, got hit by lightning, but it kind of took out our roof, and then it actually shattered my bathroom window. There's a lot of debris. There's a lot of tree debris inside my bathroom. My cat's a little scared to go in there for sure. I tried to clean up the glass, but still got a little ways to go.
Storm chances for that area will be a little later this week, and it could last into the weekend. Want to come back to the maps here, and again, you saw this complex of storms here impacting Birmingham and that area, but it was actually late Sunday night into early Monday that those storms developed, and you just saw how they tracked. So one more time, I just think it's so interesting. We had what we call an MCC, or a mesoscale convective complex. They also sometimes call them MCSs, mesoscale convective systems. But we'll watch how this develops Sunday night as the loop resets, and there it is. And then it moves along as we go into Monday. It's diving the same complex, and eventually it heads down towards Birmingham, that other area that was hit. So that's a look at that complex and those storms. What about today? Well, the greatest threat for storms, level 2 or slight risk, North Dakota, South Dakota, portions of eastern Wyoming and western Nebraska. There could be some stray strong storms down to the south, all the way through New Mexico, Colorado again, and Texas, the Panhandle. East Texas there around Houston, areas between Dallas and Houston could see something. Also much of Florida into South Georgia and southeast Alabama. Now, the greatest threat for tornadoes right here in western portions of South Dakota and up into North Dakota. You see these areas between Bismarck and we'll say Rapid City. This is the area most likely. It's fairly sparsely populated. There's not a lot of major metropolitan areas, but there are folks that live in that part of the country, and they'll definitely need to stay weather aware. The tornado potential for Wednesday shifts a little farther to the east. You can see from Huron up through Watertown and just south of Fargo in North Dakota there. They need to watch. That does include Aberdeen. Just a level 1 threat tomorrow, and it's part of a larger area that could also see gusty winds and maybe some hail up that way as well. So we're going to be watching that. That's your severe weather outlook with isolated severe storms for Nebraska, western Kansas, and eastern Colorado potentially as well. And that threat pushes back towards the Twin Cities just out there to the west of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We'll continue to monitor that, and we'll see what develops tomorrow. For Thursday, same general area, South Dakota set to get hit again. Level 2 threat for Thursday, and you can see that extends back into Wisconsin, around Minneapolis, down through Omaha, Nebraska, and then all the way back up to areas in eastern Montana. That's the severe weather outlook for Thursday. So a lot to keep an eye to for the next couple of days. We'll be doing that. All right, we're going to take a short break. Coming up, the hurricane season has begun in the Atlantic, and the chances of a super El Nino are increasing. They're very high. What this could mean for the East Coast. Good morning. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. We're so glad you're with us. All right, I mentioned today is June 2nd. You know, the Atlantic hurricane season officially began June 1. But this year may be a little quieter here along the East Coast. You see, there's an 80% chance that an El Nino event will emerge in the tropical Pacific Ocean. It starts there with warming sea surface temperatures, and if that continues, it will have global impacts. Now, we're expecting the temperatures to really warm between June and August, and it could potentially grow into a super El Nino. Now, that's according to a report from the World Meteorological Organization. A WMO official explained how the event could impact the world.
In some regions, it is likely we will see heavy rainfall and floods. In others, drought conditions. In others, increased or reduced extremes heat or tropical cyclone activity. We can also expect an increased risk of extreme heat with higher temperatures and shifting precipitation patterns, adding further stress on human health, ecosystems, agriculture, and energy systems.
Monitoring the El Nino Southern Oscillation, or the ENSO as we refer to it, for months now. We always keep an eye to it, but we've been seeing this likelihood, and now again there is growing confidence. Again, NOAA has signed off on this likelihood. The WMO now again acknowledging this 80% chance that the El Nino will form, and there's a pretty good chance it's going to be strong, if not a super El Nino. That is the general thinking. You take a look at the sea surface temperatures and its variation from normal. You can see the temperatures are actually a little cooler than normal right along our coastal waters for now. But along the southeast U.S. and into the Gulf, we have warmer than normal sea surface temperatures. Parts of the Caribbean also warmer, although there are areas that are pretty close to average. As we look across the main development region, it's really not terribly bad. In past years, we've seen record warm sea surface temperatures. We're not getting that right now, but there are still some areas that are above average. Now, when we take a look over into the eastern Pacific, this is where that El Nino is really starting to warm up. When you've got the exceptional warming or the abnormal warming here in the eastern Pacific, you have a developing El Nino, and this has been anticipated. The question is, how strong will it get? If it gets a few degrees centigrade above average, it is a super El Nino, more than 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees centigrade above the average. So right now, as we're into early June, we are starting our El Nino. We're going to come into that in the coming weeks, and then likely it will build and in all likelihood continue through the fall and even the winter into early next year. We'll have to see how long this lasts, but everything is pointing towards this developing El Nino. And again, that has impacts, more hurricanes in the eastern Pacific. And it's interesting because we have two systems I'm going to show you that are trying to develop in the eastern Pacific. We have warm and wet conditions there over that warm sea surface temperature. No surprise there. You get the warm, moist air coming off the ocean. It rises easily, condenses, and forms unsettled weather storminess, but this can breed tropical systems that develop in the eastern Pacific. Now, this also disrupts the wind flows typically, and what you see is more shearing winds back across parts of the Atlantic basin. So when storms try to develop, tropical systems try to develop here in the Atlantic basin, they tend to get disrupted and blown apart before they can really form. That's why we are hopeful and optimistic we're going to see less threatening storms here in the Atlantic basin. But it's no guarantee it's going to suppress all activity. And certainly it only takes one hurricane to do damage and create life-changing conditions for areas along the coast that get hit. So that's why we still need to pay very, very close attention. All right, as we check out the tropics now here in the Atlantic basin, you can see some unsettled weather offshore. That's associated with our old frontal boundary. Down in the Gulf, we do have an area of low pressure, kind of a broad area spinning here. It is not tropical. There are a couple areas areas with some convection or storminess, but nothing that the Hurricane Center is overly concerned with developing immediately or anything like that. I will tell you there's some deep convection down here just coming off the coast of Belize here, southern parts of Belize, and we're going to watch that in the western Caribbean. But again, most of the Caribbean clear right now, and across the basin, the main development region here in the Atlantic Basin, things are also fairly quiet. So at this point, no tropical activity is anticipated over the next 7 days, and that is good news for us. Of course, we watch this every day, and we will continue to update you not only from the weather desk, but on 13 News, all of our news programs throughout the days as well, with daybreak and then our afternoon and evening programming. As we take a look at the Eastern Pacific, different story. We've got some areas we're monitoring, one over here, one back here, and there are signs that we could see this develop. You'll notice this cluster of storms really erupting just this morning. Late last night, there wasn't anything. Now this morning, look at this blossoming just south of San Salvador and to the west of Nicaragua. This has a 40% chance of development, and even if it doesn't fully become a tropical system, which it may do, it may develop or it may not, but I still think it's going to be a heavy rainmaker over portions of southern Mexico and Central America. Out here, this complex of storms more likely to develop, chances 90% of development within the coming week. So very likely that becomes our first organized system, and then we have this one here with that 40% chance. That's what's happening in the tropics, and what we will continue to watch. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Now, remember, the tropical activity doesn't typically pick up here until we get a little later in the season, so don't drop your guard. This is the time that you want to get prepared so that when and if things do develop later in the season, you're good to go. And we do have our hurricane guide available online. If you go to our 13 News Now website, look under the weather section, you'll find the hurricane section. Lots of great information right there available to you whenever you need it. We're going to take another short break. Coming up, we have a close look at a whirlwind. Check that out. This was recorded forming over Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. And a meteor sighting shakes New England. The boom caught on camera. Plus, we'll go over the difference between a meteor, a meteorite, and a meteoroid. Can I do this part of it from Welcome back to the weather desk. We have some really cool stuff to check out. There were cameras that were installed by the U.S. Geological Survey, and they captured the moment a little whirlwind formed over Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. I love this stuff. Check it out. This video was recorded yesterday. Do you see it there? That little whirlwind. All right, that was following the volcano's most recent eruption. The USGS says that whirlwind may have been caused by heat from the lava. It warms the surface air, and then, of course, that warm air does what? It rises, and the cooler air, is above it, so it creates this updraft. And if there are any winds around there, that starts that rotation. It can create convergence, and you get the formation of that whirlwind. A little bit of condensation. There's just such a cool thing to check out, and we love that we can show you. Kilauea is one of the most active volcanoes in the world, and it has been erupting for a long time. We've had this super active period that's been going off and on for months. Nearly 50 episodes have been recorded since December of 2024. Now, cameras also captured the moment a meteor shook New England. Take a listen. Not thunder. That happened in Massachusetts near the New Hampshire state line there over the weekend. NASA confirms that boom was caused by a meteor breaking up about 40 miles above the Earth. Now, you see these flashes and you hear meteor, meteorite, meteoroid. You might be wondering, what's the difference between a meteor, a meteorite, and a meteoroid? Well, Hunter Forrest explains.
Have you ever wondered what the difference is between a meteor, meteorite, and meteoroid? Well, they're actually the same object, just at different stages of the journey. Out in space, it's called a meteoroid. These are small chunks of rock, metal, or both, often broken off from asteroids or even comets. Most are tiny, some as small as dust, but they could be also much larger. When one of these meteoroids enters Earth's atmosphere at incredibly high speeds, sometimes over 40,000 miles per hour, it heats up quickly due to friction with the air. That glowing streak of light you see, well, that's a meteor, or what sometimes we like to say, a shooting star. For example, the meteor that flew through the sky in Ohio in March of 2026 weighed about 7 tons and was 6 feet in diameter and was moving at around 45,000 miles per hour. Most meteors burn up completely before reaching the ground, but if a piece does survive the fiery trip and makes its way to Earth's surface, it becomes a meteorite. So remember, meteoroid in space, meteor in the sky, and meteorite on the ground. Same object, just different names depending on where you find it. For 13 News Now, I'm meteorologist Hunter Forrest.
All right, Hunter, we're going to take one more quick break. Coming up in 2 minutes, I'll have a look at the dangerous conditions at our ocean front with a high threat of rip currents, and we'll talk about the forecast for Hampton Roads, not only today, but through the upcoming weekend. Good morning. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. Let's go ahead and take a look at the conditions down at the ocean front. If our director could take Max 1, you'll find it there. And as we do take a look, you can see the wave action still cranked up. There's a container ship off in the distance there, and that's no problem. These waves aren't any problem for a massive ship like that. But if you were thinking about heading out to the beach and maybe wanted to do a little bit of swimming, this is not a great time to do it because we have a very high threat of rip currents right now. Those waves are generally between 3 and 6 feet, the waves that you see out there. So as we go through the day, here's what you can expect. We're going to find conditions still breezy. It's 61 right now at the airport. North-northeast winds 6 miles per hour. Gusts, again, 20 to 25 miles per hour. And we will find that rip current threat high at the beaches today. Need you to be careful. Small craft advisories up for the bay and the ocean. Told you we'd look ahead through the week and into the weekend. Temperatures getting warmer. Lots of sunshine through Friday and Saturday. A chance for a few stray showers early next week. Stay safe.